Hello, I'm Deborah Sword.
Hi, I'm Tyson Bankert.
Tyson, we were going to talk about fear. What's fear to you?
Oh, fear, I think, is the very thing that stops us from practicing conflict competency. I think fear, in my experience, has been the the gap that stops me from asking the questions to being interested in the tension. Um, yeah, and fear of getting it wrong, ultimately. Rejected, yeah.
Yeah, fear to me is a 360-degree driver of conflict. And by that I mean it causes conflict, it escalates conflict. It, as you say, it causes people not to engage in the hard conversations they should have because of fear. It creates resolution impasses in conflict. People are afraid to let go, or afraid to engage, or afraid to discuss. So there's an impasse, and it can hinder implementation of any agreement that happens. Um, to resolve that, and fear is like a wedge issue that stops communication. And fear is often the root of identity conflicts. And as you know, identity and values based conflicts are some of the most challenging to resolve. Identity is how we see ourselves, it's our self image. And we're not able to have a bad self image or a negative self image can make you afraid to go forward, afraid of the path ahead of you. So, fear is a reaction, and we fear loss, we fear losing what we have. And a lot of what presents as fear in or as anger, so pardon
Hmm.
me, a lot of what presents as anger in conflict is actually fear. And a mild version of fear is insecurity.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and I often think that we're always going to have a little bit of fear in any conflict, I feel like, right? Like that is part of the conflict. And I think I think it's important that we recognize that that's reasonable, it's okay, but how do we work through that fear and or do the thing, be competent in spite of the fear, right? And being like both of those things can be held at once. But I'm curious to know what you think about that.
Yeah. And fear is also information that you have fear of, fear from, fear about.
Hmm.
If you interrogate the fear, what am I afraid of? What would it look like if I wasn't afraid? Remembering that thoughts are not reality. Is that fear real or is it something I think?
Hmm. 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 Yeah, that's so important because I think what is so helpful is when we do resolve conflict or attempt to, it actually helps to um, relieve our fear, right? Deborah, I have a problem with you, and let's talk about it. And then you go, Tyson, it's not a big deal, or let's explain, or you explain yourself, and I can go, I can relax and go, oh, I'm no longer fearful. I can actually I'm actually, it's almost, it's a comfort, right? You're not making me feel comfortable in that conflict because we're able to talk about it, or we're practicing those skills that we've been that this whole series is about, is to be able to really um, help resolve some of the fear.
I wonder if that fear, uh, the conflict competence around that fear, is emotional intelligence.
Mm,
That being able to identify exactly what the emotion is that fear is covering up. What I'm afraid of spiders. What's that about? Um, maybe it's evolutionary that there was a time when spiders, and there are still spiders that are deadly. Maybe it's an evolutionary advantage to be an arachnophobe and fear spiders.
Mhm.
But if you interrogate the emotion, it can make the fear a lot less dangerous. When you were a kid, were there monsters under your bed? And if you took a flashlight and looked under the bed and actually got the information,
Mhm.
did that make the fear go away? Not if
Right.
it was emotionally based. It's not fact based, it's emotion based. So the conflict competence is to understand the emotional component of your fear. And then, as I say, ask the question, what would it look like if I wasn't afraid? Then what would I do?
You look under the bed.
You look under the bed with a flashlight.
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
and a weapon just in case there really is a monster under the bed
Right?
to be prepared.
Absolutely.
So, Tyson, what are you afraid of?
Oof. What am I afraid of? I am afraid of getting it wrong, even in the conflict. I usually come with a couple. I'm not as curious as I think I could, as I know I should be.
And what would it look like if you weren't afraid of being wrong?
Mm. I think it would be more open to other people's perspectives. I think it would mean that I would have more ability to be just generally open-minded, hearing what is possible, in what a resolution could look like when it comes to conflict. Um,
And it sounds like, as well as being open, it sounds like you could be braver about engaging in that conflict if you weren't afraid of being wrong.
mhm,
And then I would ask you, what does it matter if you're wrong? What are you afraid
mhm,
about in being wrong? What does that fear look like? What
mhm.
is the thought you have that being wrong looks like? Remember, I said at one time, identity conflicts are some of the hardest to resolve. What part of your identity is wrapped up in not being wrong? And this isn't therapy.
No,
This
I'm
this is conflict analysis.
well, Deborah, I could tell you lack of control as being one of them.
Okay.
Being able to lack of control, having a narrative or a prescription of who I am that someone else holds that I don't have control over. Um, Having to now do something about it, just generally, you know. And so I think about that, and I think about the flashlight, right? Because the flashlight to me is the tool, is the conflict competency, right? It's to face that thing, and I think shining the light on those skills of of the issue or the conflict, even if there is a spider under the bed, you now know it's there, right? And you can then deal with it. You can start to manage it, and you have whether the flashlight becomes the weapon or you run. You get to have some. You get to know what you're dealing with, and I think the idea of as the kids say, not being no longer being delusional is really helpful to be able to face some of those skills. And what we fear oftentimes to what we've talked about is just a lack of information, right? Is that fear of the unknown.
Very much so. And we also talk about getting feedback, asking people. So you haven't asked for feedback, but I will tell you that even if you are wrong and wrong in the biggest possible way, it will not lower my high opinion of you.
Hmm.
So do not fear being wrong because I'm not going to change my opinion of you.
That's so great to hear. I feel confident now.
So the conflict competency is to understand the emotion behind your fear, interrogate it, ask what would be the worst thing that could happen if your fear came true, and how would you deal with that? Thank you for listening. Tyson, thank you for being so open. You were very open once you weren't afraid.
Thank you for helping me.
like I say, conflict analysis is not therapy, it's curiosity.
Mm.
We hope you'll subscribe, like it, share it, come back and listen again. Thank you.